Alright, once again, deck profile. This time an updated deck profile of my Maelstrom deck, and it's time to evolve them to Glory Maelstrom from set 6 of Divines. Because this is one of the forms I've been waiting for so long, after how many sets since Maelstrom was introduced. And honestly, I was expecting Glory Maelstrom to show up in Divine Set 9, just so to mimic the original Clash of Knights and Dragons. But they put in Set 6, so it's actually earlier than expected, but I would say sooner the better. But anyway, what I think about this deck? Originally, I had mixed feelings about it because it basically played the same as Flagberg. But yes, Maelstrom is the original that does the 4 attacks, retire one of your opponent's rear guards and draw a card, and also evolve form with the card restrict. But Flagberg became the original for the D series. So the minute they released Maelstrom, I was very mixed. But since I was a sucker for Aquaforce, and I really liked the Aquaforce aesthetic, I kind of end up building the deck with set 11, even though it was introduced in set 8 because it was absurdly cheap. Each copy of Maelstrom at the time was a quarter each, so I went like, screw it, just build a deck. And I was just hoping for Glory Maelstrom to eventually show up. And show up it did, because I was expecting this a little later from Divine Set 9, but we got in Divine Set 6, and I'm really happy with the result with Glory Maelstrom. This deck operates kind of similar to the original, especially on how it was originally introduced, where you basically do multi-attack on the rear guard. But how they differentiate Maelstrom to Flagberg in D series is that they did more column swapping, just like how the original one was introduced. The original one was introduced with more column swapping than multi-attacking with the same rear guard. And that is one thing that I really loved about Maelstrom back in the day as well, is the multi-attacking with the rear guard with more column swapping. And I just found that cool back in the day. And then Glory Maelstrom makes it even better with the guard restrict. And he comes back with a guard restrict, making the deck even better, and also making use of the Blue Storm Armada, which is something I was always very iffy about the deck, because the Blue Storm Armadas kind of did nothing after its use. But now with Glory Maelstrom, there's actually use for the Blue Storm Armadas, and also makes the original Maelstrom even better. But anyway, with all that out of the way, let's just begin with the deck profile. We of course start off with the Ride deck. Eric, because Aquaforce. And then we go to Theo, where when you ride a grade 2 Aquaforce on top of it, search your deck for a Blue Storm Armada card from your deck and add to your hand. Blue Storm Armada being a set order, and it's the most important card of the deck, by the way. And second skill, which will sometimes be used, where when it attacks during your turn, it gets plus 5k, which isn't too bad, and you might use this sometimes because of a skill that will be mentioned later. In which we go to Algos, where when rolled upon by Aquaforce unit, look at top 7 cards of your deck for 1 Aquaforce or Tear Dragon from among them, and add to your hand. The nice part, it says Tear Dragon, meaning that you can even run some of your other stuff that says Tear Dragon, like Inlet Pulse. Although, because of the new support, you don't really need Inlet Pulse anymore, but you can still run it. And I have to say, I did try out running the Inlet Pulse, and I did not find that much need for it. So I kind of just end up taking it out, but I did play 1. So there is that if you want to try it. But the second skill is that when this card attacks, if it's the 4th battle of the turn, plus 5k, and if attack hits, you can draw a card. Sometimes that will be used, but most likely not. In which we go to Glory Maelstrom itself, which cannot be talked about without the original Maelstrom, which you must play 4 copies. So first off, let's go off with the original Maelstrom. So, once per turn, on an act, you can discard 1 card from your hand to choose a card from your soul that is Aquaforce or Tear Dragon, then call it to rearguard, and it gets the ability into the end of turn. At the end of the battle, it attacked, and it's the first battle turn, you can counterblast 1. If your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3, you can stand the unit. But at the end of the turn, you must put that card back to soul. Yeah, so you get a first battle multi-attack rearguard, hence why I said something about Algos being called from soul. And that's what I also meant about Inlet Pulse, because that one's also going to be going from soul, and you can call it back from rearguard. So there is that. And of course, if you play with Inlet Pulse, well, Inlet Pulse can go first before this sucks it to soul, so you got the extra draw as well. But to be very honest, the reason why you play the 4 Maelstrom is mainly for this first skill, because it's going to be combined with Glory. And also the fact that it's original Maelstrom, which is also going to be combined with Glory. But just in case, if you need to, the second skill is that when this card attacks a Vanguard while it's the 4th attack or more, you can draw a card and retire 1 of your opponent's rear guard. Nice that it's free, but you're not going to be using it for the second skill other than certain matchups if you need it. You mainly use it for the first skill of the discard superior call from soul. Because the important part is that if you get to Glory Maelstrom, while you have the original Maelstrom in your soul or rear guard, For every Blue Storm Armada card in your order zone, you get plus 5k to the whole front row. And also, it also inherits the original ACK ability, aka the first skill of Maelstrom that lets you Superior Call. That's very huge because one thing you can do literally is that you can Superior Call the Maelstrom from Soul because of the inherent skill, and then because of the Superior Call Maelstrom, it's a new Maelstrom that you can actually use the skill again. And yeah, it's for each Maelstrom that you have, so you basically can continue Superior Calling until you kind of just run out of using that skill. But not only that, it helps out with the power problems, which is something Aquaforce always had, especially this deck. The numbers were always weak, so this card giving the extra 5k power buff for every Blue Storm Armada just really helps. Especially with the second skill where when your Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom attacks, it gets those 5k power if it's the 4th battle, and also retire and draw. So basically it inherits the original skill for the Maelstrom attack, so making use of the Rearguard Maelstrom attack as well. And it is not limited to once per turn, so you have more than one of these Maelstroms in your rearguard, you can just do that multiple times. And yeah, overall that is just pretty nice because that's just multiple removal right there. And also the additional 5k power buff, which is also very nice because the original Maelstrom did not get the original 5k power buff. So it is very nice that it gives out the original skill as well. But the third skill is the Guard Restrict skill. That is basically a Glory Maelstrom thing. So when your Maelstrom attacks, and it could even be your rearguard one, rest 2 Blue Storm Armada cards in your order zone, and during the battle, your opponent cannot use Sentinels for the attack. Pretty nice, especially since you could actually stack this. Sure, you have a total of 4 Blue Storm Armadas, so that means that you can do it for up to 2 attacks in a turn, although most of the time it's going to be only 1. But it is overall nice, especially since inheriting the Guard Restrict like the original Glory Maelstrom and making use of the Blue Storm Armada, which is also what I like. But what makes this card really good is that it helps out with the extra power, which is already very huge, and inheriting the original Maelstrom skill, which actually helps out with the board, which the deck can still suffer from the board problems, but it still helps out quite a bit. And also it's very nice that you still get the original Maelstrom skill. So yeah, this is a very good upgrade, and I already really like it. So that's it for the ride deck. On to the main deck. Other than the 4 regular Maelstroms, we of course run 3 more Glory Maelstroms. Yes, as you can tell, I ran the Glory Maelstrom in the ride deck, and this one for Persona riding, so you're going to be skipping the evolution, because there's a way to put in Soul. And also, you can always just call it to rearguard as well. And then to the most important card of the deck, which is the Blue Storm Armada, the Judgment Maelstrom. The attack name of Maelstrom, basically. Now, you mainly use it for the fact that it's just the most important card of the deck, but it isn't that great, I'm going to be very honest. But when you play it, you Superior Call a Aquaforce or Tear Dragon from the drop zone, helps you out with the board a bit. But the other part is that you choose one of your units when in place, and give it plus 5k power for every other Blue Storm Armada card in your order zone. So it doesn't count itself, so the first time you play it, it's not going to get the 5k buff. But the second time you play it, it will get the 5k buff. And you do, of course, want at least 2. At the moment, this is the only Blue Storm Armada, so you just have to play 4. But it does help a bit, so of course you just have to run it. So that's it for the grade 3 lineup. For the grade 2 lineup, just in case, I still run 2 Tidal Assaults. Because Tidal Assault, on attack, you can Soul Blast 1, give one of your Maelstrom units plus 5k power, and also you can Counter Blast 1 on the second attack to restand it, which is sometimes very helpful because you don't need to rely on another rearguard compared to Column Swappers. Although being a solo attacker on its own, it is kind of weak, but being a multi-attacker on its own is also very helpful. And then the new card that you must run is the Tier Knight Icarus. So it's treated as an Aquaforce unit, which is very huge because now it makes it searchable. The second part is that when placed on rearguard, if your Vanguard is Aquaforce, you can search your top 7 for a Maelstrom or Blue Storm Armada card, and of course add it to your hand, but if you add a card to your hand, you choose a card from your hand and put to Soul, or discard it. The put to Soul doesn't really matter because you can Superior Call from Soul. You could even Superior Call from Drop Zone, so either one is actually good. But the main part is that you want to search for Maelstrom and put that regular Maelstrom to Soul, which already makes this a 4-of. But the second skill makes it even better because at the end of battle attack and your Vanguard is Maelstrom, you can Counter Blast 1 to do the column swapping. And here's what I mean about Aquaforce column swapping. Sure, it's a low power attack, but with your Blue Storm Armada, with Glory Maelstrom fixing that, the 15k attacker small poke is kind of fine anyway. And just having the extra multi-attack is just very helpful because you do want to reach the 4 attacks. And then another card, which is kind of debatable whether I want to continue running more than 2 copies of this, Flow Strike Brave Shooter. So first off, it gets plus 5k power for every Blue Star Armada card in your order zone. That is actually the main reason why I kind of run this, because it's extra power, which is very helpful. And in the back row, at the end of battle, your front row unit in the same column as this unit attacked, and your Vanguard's Maelstrom, you can counterblast 1 to do the column swapping. So basically, front row unit attacks, this one swaps with that front row unit, and then it does another attack, which is of course very helpful with the multi-attack, but it's also very helpful for the fact that it gets itself extra power as well, so it just makes its attack even stronger. That's why I still kind of like this card. Not sure if I should run 4 or not, especially since you do need some space for certain other cards. And then that's it for the grade 2 lineup. To the grade 1 of the lineup, I run 2 Wheel Assaults. This is basically another column swapping card, but it's after it boosts and you have a Vanguard Maelstrom, you do a Soul Blast. And of course, you can choose from 2 different columns. It's here just in case you need it, and the deck does more column swapping than the restanding multi-attack, but also nice that it's a booster, which is something the deck kind of also lacks, but at the same time, you're going to be filling up your board with multi-attackers, but sometimes you do have too many different multi-attackers that you can't really do the column swapping, so this just helps you with the column swapping. And then to continue off, for a new card, here's the Encounter generic for Stokea. Funny enough, it's for a clan that cannot even use this right now, which is the Dancing Cutlass. So when discarded from your hand for the Ride deck or the main phase, you can Energy Blast 3 to draw. Better than the Cycler, I must say. And also, you're going to be discarding a lot, so it's also very helpful. But the second skill, where at drop, you can remove 2 cards with the same card name as this card and do a counter charge. So far, the deck doesn't use Counterblast too fast, but it does use quite a bit. So having that extra counter charge is pretty nice. So I just run it. But like I said, Counterblast doesn't go by too fast, so you don't need it too often either. And then Tier Knight Heraclius. So on plays, if your Vanguard's Aqua Force, you can discard a card from your hand to search for a Blue Star Armada or recycle a Blue Star Armada from the drop zone. Sometimes you will need to recycle the Blue Star Armada from the drop zone because you do kind of discard them sometimes. So it's just here for some extra consistency if you need it. And then one card that I'm debating about still is the Battle Siren Elithera. Because on place from hand, you can Energy Charge 2, which of course the Energy Charge can be quite helpful, especially if you're using Cutlass a bit. And then at the beginning of your battle phase, if you have at least a grade 3 Vanguard Tier Dragon, you can Soul Blast 1 to choose one of your units, and then it gets this ability at the end turn. When it attacks, plus 5k. Because of Glory Maelstrom inheriting regular Maelstrom skill, Superior Call, that Superior Call skill gives the Maelstrom unit the ability to attack twice, possibly giving it a 10k power buff for the turn. And let's not forget those extra skills that add even more power. But at the same time, it does cost soul, which the deck does use the soul for its resource as well, but it's not super heavy, especially with the new searcher that can also put stuff in soul. So I say this card is still decent to run as a 2-off. And then of course finally the 4 PGs, because PGs, and because I don't have enough Sanctitudes. And now for the trigger lineup, OT, run whichever one you want. I was thinking running the blue one. 8 crits for full on pressure, 3 draws because you still want to see your key pieces and you do need a field, and 4 heals, 2 beam counters. And so that's it for this deck profile of my updated Maelstrom deck, simply the Glory Maelstrom deck. What do you guys think of it? What other cards would you recommend, and what other changes would you make? Personally, I really like the deck how it is. I did play this deck a bit to see how well it works, and I have to say, it is working pretty well. The only thing that I still am a bit iffy about is maybe running Inlet Pulse or not, just because it does go back to Soul. But how the deck works right now, it works pretty well. With Maelstrom and Glory Maelstrom, just awesome design, and I do like the playstyle, so it's just pretty awesome. But on that, there's really not much to say about this deck. It's just one of the upgraded decks, so I just have to do a deck profile on it, and it's just my take on it. But just be aware, if you're trying to build this deck, it is not cheap right now, because thanks to Glory Maelstrom, regular Maelstrom has went up in price just because it has not been reprinted, and some of his other support cards went up in price, although not insane as regular Maelstrom. But on that, that's it for this, and see you all next time.